Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the business of soccer.
The appetite for soccer in this country is here to stay.
The Global World Cup of 26 will bring just that, the globe, to the United States.
Every 4 years, there's this moment where the world wakes up to the incredible athletes that we have on the U.S. women's national team.
There are more soccer games available to watch on television in the U.S. than any other country in the world.
Soccer, or as I would call it, living in the UK, football, is the biggest sport in the world.
There's a gap in the market around women's soccer, and we're here to fill that gap.
Bloomberg Business of Soccer from Bloomberg Radio.
This is a special edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast, The Business of Soccer. I'm Vanessa Perdomo, and I'm diving in behind the scenes as we get ready for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which is officially 100 days out. Before my conversation today with FIFA Chief Business and Strategy Officer, we want to address the situation with the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Iran qualified to play in the World Cup last year and are scheduled to play in Group G as of now. When asked about Iran's participation in the tournament, FIFA Secretary General Mateusz Grafstrom had this to say on Saturday, February 28th.
Well, I think I read the news the same way as you did this morning. We had the meeting today, and I think it's a bit premature to comment on it in detail, but of course we'll monitor the developments around all issues around the world. I think we had the final draw in Washington where all teams participated, and of course our focus is to have a safe World Cup with everybody participating.
That was FIFA's Secretary General Mateusz Grafstrom commenting on Iran's participation in the tournament. We will continue to monitor that situation. But now we will bring in Chief Business and Strategy Officer at FIFA, Amy Hopfinger. She's here to give us all the details about what to expect over the next 100 days as we count down to the biggest sporting event in the world. Amy, thanks so much for joining the Bloomberg Business of Soccer.
Thanks for having me.
100 days out from kickoff. Can you believe it's that close, or does it not feel close? Does it feel close? How are you feeling right now?
Oh, man, all the emotions. This is something that I've been working on and been involved in since 2017. So to be only 100 days out is really incredible. Those 100 days is still quite a long way to go, but really excited about what's to come over the next 100 and I guess now 40 days till we get to July 19th.
And what is to come over those next 100 days? What can we expect? What does FIFA have to do over those next 100 days? And what do the host cities have to do over those next 100 days?
Yeah, I think, we feel really comfortable and confident in where we are in the planning. This has been a long time coming. We've been working on this since the U.S., Mexico, and Canada won the bid back in 2018. Since FIFA set up offices in our three host countries back in 2023. So it's not like, the work is just starting. The work has been done. We've got great partners in our three, countries and our 16 host cities. Their planning has been pretty consistent, has intensified. Obviously, things like pitches are going in stadiums that were NFL stadiums up until a couple months ago, for some of our teams. We've got, team workshop today. Last time all the teams are getting together before they come into country in May, June. We've got a poster release that we're doing today. We've got a bunch of other entertainment announcements that'll be coming in the coming weeks, on top of, just the operations that get us to June 11th.
And so is it go time, or like you had mentioned, obviously it's been almost go time, right, since 2018, since these cities were awarded the games. But what do those cities have to do in terms of to get those games? Like, what do they have to prove to FIFA that they're ready to host these events, and that over the next 100 days that they're going to be ready for all the people who are going to come as well?
Yeah, I don't think so much about proving, because the work has been done over the last few years to get us to this point. We're getting to the technical side of it. Like I said, grass is going in stadiums where grass didn't exist. I was in Kansas City yesterday, and their pitch project is well on its way. It's fine tuning things with host cities when it comes to, what and how we're communicating to fans about how to get to the stadium. It's the minutia now, as opposed to the big broad things, which is exciting because that means we're in a really good spot. We're in a spot where, we can start thinking about fine tuning as opposed to, the big decisions and big things that need to happen.
And there are obviously big things that still need to happen. Obviously, there's still 6 teams that need to qualify, right? For the final 6 teams.
Yep.
And, on top of that, there are other things that need to be sorted out. There's funding that needs to be sorted out. There's a situation in Iran that needs to be sorted out over those next 100 days. What can you tell us about those big things? And do you feel like over the next 100 days, everything, will get sorted out for kickoff?
Sure. 100 days is a short period of time, but it's also a long period of time in the world that we live in now. If you think about, how quickly things change. We do have a playoff at the end of the month. So we've got 6 more teams to qualify, 4 from Europe and 2 from the Intercontinental playoff. So that'll be exciting to get the last 6 teams in. We've got some placeholders in there, but to actually slot those names into a match schedule will be, another major milestone for us. The dynamic around, the host cities around the world, around, the 3 host countries, continues to change and evolve. We work really, really closely, not only with our host cities, but with our host country governments to make sure that we are delivering the most safe and secure World Cup that we possibly can across all stakeholders.
And how does that work? I mean, obviously, this World Cup is very different than the last World Cup that took place in one place across roughly 100 miles. So working with 3 different countries, how has that been, and the collaboration there that needs to go across U.S., Canada, and FIFA and Mexico? Yeah,
just a slightly different geographic setup than we had in Qatar 4 years ago. But it's been great. From day one, this was something that U.S., Mexico, and Canada from top to bottom were really invested in, going back to the bid and getting us all the way to today. So you see that, take shape in all different ways. FIFA has offices in all 3 countries. We've had offices in all 3 countries, from the very beginning. We've got offices in all of the 16 host cities now, which has really helped us, make sure that we're dialed into what's going on. But the collaboration and coordination across the 3 countries, across the 16 cities is really strong. I can't say enough about how fast we've grown and how we've gotten to a place today where, we've got 1,000 employees for FIFA working across the 3 countries and working, as seamlessly as one can hope for in a project this big.
And in terms of working across those countries and making sure this is, such a secure World Cup and that you guys are hoping for, there's obviously, like we said, there's a lot going on right now in the world in the U.S. and recently situations in Mexico. So when those sorts of things happen, are conversations ramped up about further security, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, safety and security is paramount to a successful World Cup. So that's a cornerstone of everything we do, whether that's just normal operations, or, highly, heightened situations like we've had in the last couple of weeks. So, the situation in Mexico is one that we were tracking from the very beginning, with our team on the ground in Mexico, as well as the federal government there. It's something that we, feel comfortable with where we are today. We've got, a team on the ground that's monitoring it real time. We've got additional people going in this week, as you saw from the FIFA president, at the offer of the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum. So those things are happening. Those things, we don't need a situation like what happened in Mexico, though, to make sure that we're having these safety and security conversations, because we're doing that day in and day out.
Yeah, absolutely. So in those, all the different cities, every city has a different amount of games and things like that, and are activating in different ways. What can you tell us about some of the cities that potentially only have like 4 to 6 games, but that they're activating across the entire span of the tournament?
Yeah, I think that's one of the unique parts about this World Cup is not only do you have 3 host countries, you have 16 very, very different and dynamic cities. So, the geography of them is different. Their match schedules are different. All kinds of different factors, make them unique and different. So finding a way to make sure that we've got one World Cup, 16 different host cities has been a priority for us from the beginning. And it is about the whole 39 days. So it's about celebrating the World Cup. And for some cities, it's longer than that. Some cities that are team-based camps, that really starts for them the moment a team steps foot into their city, which can be, end of May, early June. So what a World Cup looks like in each city is a little bit different. How they're approaching it is a little bit different. And that's what North America is about. We aren't a continent or 3 countries that are going to, put out cookie cutter fan experiences. They're going to be really unique and adaptive to each of the cities.
And how do you make sure to work with the local communities there? Obviously, each host committee is just based in that city and they're working with local government and local officials. But how do you make sure that each city is representative of that community as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, we've got great relationships with the host committees. We really, truly believe that they are the World Cup. They're the ones that are responsible on the ground for delivering. And our relationship with them is great, and we partner with them all the time. They talk amongst each other. I know, the 11 U.S. cities, meet regularly. We meet with them regularly. We bring all 16 cities together regularly. So the dynamics, and then you've got geographic dynamics. You've got a Seattle, Vancouver, who've got a great relationship. You've got, a Northeast corridor, which includes, a bunch of cities in the U.S., but also Toronto. So those relationships have developed over the last couple of years. Very independent from us, but we have, brought everyone together at key moments and key times. We had our last host city workshop with all 16 cities in January. And it's fun to see the relationships that have developed from the first time we did that back in 2022.
And how is the economic, boom going to be for this World Cup? Obviously, there are projections and all those things, but now that it's getting closer, are those numbers starting to get more real?
Yeah, I think, that was part of, bringing the World Cup to North America. You got the biggest media market in the world. You've got, opportunities that maybe you don't have everywhere else. So making sure that, this World Cup is really, the biggest and best. We talk about it being the largest, major sporting event ever. And it has the opportunity to do that, just by virtue of having 104 games, the reach, the access to tickets, in terms of quantity of tickets, is staggering. So, I think that we're tracking well when it comes to tickets, hospitality, commercial partnership sales, media rights sales, and so on.
And how many tickets have been sold so far and are projected to be sold?
I can't tell you right now today what's been sold, because that number changes every day and I don't have it in front of me. Mm-hmm. We've got different phases of ticket sales. We had a very early Visa pre-sale. We had some public on sales. We had some group sales. So, teams and others that have set allotments of tickets. So those phases are continuing and ongoing. We've got a last minute ticket sales window that'll open later this spring for any last minute tickets that get are available. But that final number changes all the time too, based on what we need for camera positions and things like that. So.
And a lot has been made about ticket prices and the, price fixed model and the variation cost model and all of that. And recently, a lot has been made out of the parking prices. What can you say about that and about, the criticism that's gone into that?
Yeah, I think it's in part a virtue of being in this market. We see and we've seen, anything that we're selling goes on the secondary market for however many X. So, we are trying to make sure that, we are responsible as event owners. We're providing access where and when we can. Parking, for instance, is not something that FIFA had typically sold in the past because it was very limited in other situations and instances. In some of these cities, and some of the cities in the U.S. specifically, there are large parking opportunities. So it's a new endeavor for us. It's something that we're continuing to look at and to monitor. But for every parking lot that we control, there's 5 to 10 that someone else controls in and around the stadium. And if you look at those prices, those are much different than what FIFA is charging.
And then there's obviously the public transportation. And today it was just announced that the Trump administration is announcing $100 million in funding for public transportation around the World Cup, which is really helpful for cities. But the other side of it was there's delay in other funding. I know that's not something you guys have to deal with, but can you at least give us a little bit of an idea of when someone's chosen as a host nation, what are those things that they have to do in order to make sure transportation and all those other things, security and all those other things are funded?
Yeah, I think, on the funding, I can speak less to. On the operational side of it, it's very clear, who's responsible for what. Obviously, transportation is important, making sure that individuals that have tickets that, aren't from that market, aren't from, maybe that host city, maybe from that host country, have an opportunity and access to get to the stadium. So transportation has been a priority for us. We're really excited about the funding that's going to the cities, and specifically to the cities, not to FIFA, to ensure that transportation is successful this summer. You've got, all kinds of different transportation, situations in the U.S. alone. You've got cities that are, in the city center. You've got stadiums that are in the city center, stadiums that are a little bit further out. So the transportation needs vary by city, and we're supportive of any funding and opportunities that they get. Same for, any of the federal funding opportunities. FIFA supports the host cities in those efforts and in those endeavors, especially money that's going towards safety and security, because that is a priority for us, for the host cities and for the host countries.
And as we're talking about host cities, obviously we have to wrap up here, Amy, but as we're talking about the host cities, are there any cities, that FIFA was really blown away by that are going to be host cities that people should pay attention to, should visit? I know you can't name a favorite or anything like that, but one of the things that was interesting to me was that 3 different countries are having their home base set up in Kansas City, right? So what are those different places that are really exciting to you that for the World Cup as a host city?
Yeah, I think, I will not pick favorites. I do not have favorites, but I think each city has something so unique to offer fans. So whether it's the local cuisine, whether it's local culture, you've got hidden gems like Kansas City, you've got well-known cities like Los Angeles and Miami. You've got unbelievable stadiums, in Dallas and, Atlanta. So every city, every stadium, and I skew towards the United States because I spend most of my time focusing there, is so unique and so different and has so much to offer to each of these cities. You've got a Philadelphia where, it's also America's 250th, birthday. So you're in the heartbeat of that. So each of them will really be tapping into, who they are and what they are and the identity of their city and trying to bring that to the World Cup, which makes this one, so unique and so different.
Chief Business and Strategy Officer at FIFA, Amy Hopfinger, thanks so much for joining the Bloomberg Business of Soccer. 100 days out. I'm so excited.
Thanks. Happy 100 days.
And that does it for this edition of the Business of Soccer. It's part of a series we're doing for the Bloomberg Business of Sports as we get ready for the FIFA World Cup in 2026 in just 100 days. I'm Vanessa Perdomo. Make sure you subscribe now on all your podcast platforms so you never miss an episode. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.